Catholic Charities of Louisville has been working with victims and survivors of human trafficking since 2007. The human trafficking program is now known as the Bakhita Empowerment Initiative. My name is Marissa Castellanos, and I'm the program director. Although Kentucky is not a border state or a major point of entry into the U.S., it faces a severe problem of labor and sex trafficking in small towns and urban areas across the Commonwealth, Louisville included. Crisscrossed by multiple interstates, Kentucky is host to a number of high-profile events, including the Kentucky Derby and the NCAA tournament, which increase traffic in the commercial sex market and lead to increased trafficking of adults and youth for labor and for sex. Kentucky's high rates of poverty, child maltreatment, and the drug epidemic have led to increased vulnerability of youth being trafficked by both parents and pimps, who are their traffickers. Workers in Kentucky's fields, restaurants, private homes, and hotels, they're forced to work in horribly exploitative conditions, told they have invisible yet substantial debts to pay. Their families are threatened with harm. Often, when foreign national victims are identified, they're criminalized. They're put in detention. They're treated worse than the traffickers. This is the reality today in Kentucky communities. 10 years ago, Catholic Charities received referrals for the first 2 human trafficking survivors that we've worked with, and we began providing case management and legal services to victims. Since then, we've become the only agency in Louisville Metro and in the larger state of Kentucky to provide case management and direct services to labor and sex trafficking survivors. Direct services often include assistance with basic needs like clothing and food, personal items, emergency and transitional housing, medical care, therapy services, legal services, and translation or interpreter services. Catholic Charities has provided case management to more than 200 victims in just the past 4 years alone. Additionally, we have served 190 plus adolescent girls through our My Life, My Choice prevention and support group program. Many of them have histories of sexual exploitation or trafficking. These victims include foreign nationals and domestics, male and female victims, adults, and children. In 2013, Catholic Charities responded to a request for services from law enforcement for a 13-year-old girl who had been trafficked for sex. She was originally from Louisville, but had been taken to Nashville, Tennessee, where she was compelled to engage in prostitution, along with many other teenage girls. She was 13 years old. She was made to have sex with many men a day, every day. She was 13 years old. She was given drugs daily by the gang members who were her traffickers. She was 13 years old. When she was identified by law enforcement and returned to Louisville, she was given medical treatment, and she tested positive for several STIs for which she was treated. She was only 13 years old. Within days of receiving treatment, she ran away, and then she was missing for 5 years. During those 5 years, we maintained contact with the girl's family and were able to provide them emotional support and assist with legal services for the family. In the last few weeks, the same girl has been identified and is no longer missing. She's with her family again. She's 18 years old now, and she has an infant daughter. After several years of victimization, she's now in need of extensive services. Education assistance, because she only completed the 7th grade and is interested in getting her GED. Parenting classes, she needs substance abuse treatment, therapy services, family legal services, case management, and support with basic needs for herself and her daughter. I spent time with her recently at her family's house, sitting in the living room with her. We talked for a while, and I called out the strength of spirit that I saw in her. I told her I believe she can do big things in her life, and I saw the love and the hope in her eyes as she held her infant daughter. We made plans for her future. 5 years later, she's planning to live and to overcome. A few weeks ago, I received a phone call from another young woman, now in her 20s. She's from Congo, and she was forced to be a housekeeper and nanny for several years, first in Uganda, and then here in the United States. She was a slave in this family's home most of her adolescent years, including her first years of young adulthood. She was forced to make food for the entire family, which she wasn't permitted to eat herself. She was shouted at every morning to wake her up, where she slept near the children of the house, who she was to care for. She was denied basic items, such as things to keep herself clean, and she was told to make do without them. Imagine, for 6 years, not being provided any hygiene products for your monthly cycle. It was done to humiliate and degrade her, and to exercise the control that they had over her life. She wasn't permitted to speak to her family in Congo, who didn't know where she was. She was never paid for 6 years of grueling work, never paid. She was referred to as a dog. She suffered such spirit-breaking abuse. She was dehumanized in whatever ways they could think of to dehumanize her. When I first met her, she looked twice her age. As a result of the toxic stress, the trauma, and the physical conditions of her exploitation. At that time, the trafficker was working at the same business where my husband worked, and my husband knew who the trafficker was. These cases, they hit close to home, sometimes in more ways than you could ever imagine. And there is fear and danger, not just for the victims and survivors, but also for those who come alongside them. After 6 years, she was able to finally ask for help, to make one phone call, and then she planned her escape. And we came alongside her. We got her to a safe location, helped her get her own apartment, helped her report to the police, provided immigration legal services, and helped her access a civil attorney. She now has a visa. She's a good job at a hospital where she now trains others. She plans to be a nurse. She says she's happy. Her hope is renewed. She was calling to tell me that she's planning to get married soon, and she'd like me to come to the wedding. She's hopeful, as am I. I got involved in the modern-day abolitionist movement as a young married woman wanting to fight for the oppressed, give a voice to the vulnerable and broken, and to reach the eternal in people. It's my hope that that's what I've been able to do in some measure during these last 10 years working with victims and survivors. I see our common humanity, and while my heart breaks for them and with them, my hope is always renewed when I see the resiliency of the human spirit. My husband supports me in what can often be chaotic and heart-wrenching work, and ultimately walks alongside me in this work in so many ways. He reminds me every day of the goodness in men, and how men can do so much to empower and lift up women and girls. And we have 3 young children now, 2 girls and a boy, and so I fight for them too, hoping they will not be vulnerable to this sort of exploitation, teaching them to fight for the oppressed, and hoping that they will know a world free of slavery. Father Gregory Boyle writes in his book, Tattoos on the Heart, Scripture scholars contend that the original language of the Beatitudes not be rendered as blessed are the single-hearted, or blessed are the peacemakers, or blessed are those who struggle for justice. Greater precision in translation would say, you're in the right place if you are single-hearted or work for peace. The Beatitudes is not a spirituality, after all, he says. It's a geography. It tells us where to stand. As suggested by Father Boyle, may we consider these geographies of the Beatitudes. You're in the right place if you've poured yourself out for others and are feeling empty. When you occupy less space, there is more room for God to be present in you. You're in the right place if you're kind and compassionate in all circumstances. When you show grace to others, you will change others' lives, and your life will be changed. You're standing in the right place if you look for the good in yourself and others. When you tell better stories, God is present and at work there, bringing about more good. You're in the right place if you work for peace. For in peacemaking, there is justice, freedom, and unity. God resides there in the work of peace. Today and always, may we provide hope to the hopeless, help for those in need, and a voice to the silenced and forgotten. May we find ourselves standing in the right place. There are many ways to support anti-trafficking work and to help victims and survivors. Go to cclu.org to see ways to get involved, such as becoming a My Life, My Choice group facilitator for adolescent girls, or purchasing a survivor guide, which is a helpful tool for victims, written by survivors, purchasing toiletry kits, putting them together, and donating them to our program so that we can provide initial basic needs to victims when we first meet them. Providing gift cards or other monetary donations to help with the extensive resource-heavy services that victims so need and deserve. Hosting an awareness event or a fundraiser to encourage other folks to learn about and care about the issue of trafficking. Thank you.